The rise and fall of JDS Wakaba, a unique story. The Imperial Japanese Navy's final days were a far cry from its glory days. By war's end, they had only a handful of battered ships, a few damaged carriers, a couple of sunken battleships, and scattered cruisers and destroyers in various states of disrepair. None of these would see service in the new Japan. They were either scrapped or handed over to the Allied victors. Some, like the destroyer Heiki with the Soviets or Yukikaz with China, surprisingly served for a long time, but none remained in Japan. Except, there's a twist. One forgotten Imperial warship did serve with the post-war Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, MSDF. It wasn't a lucky survivor, but a ship sunk and forgotten, only to be raised years later. This ship, the escort destroyer Nashi, wasn't among the survivors. Sunk during the war, she was salvaged in 1954, renamed JDS Wakaba, and became the only former Imperial warship in the new Japan's Navy. JDS Wakaba's humble beginnings. Launched in September 1944, Wakaba, originally Nashi, was one of many small destroyers built during a desperate time for Japan. The pre-war destroyer fleet was largely gone, and building new ones quickly was crucial, especially for anti-submarine warfare. Recognizing this need in 1942, Japan began building Escort destroyers, smaller, slower, and cheaper alternatives to traditional fleet destroyers. These could be built faster and in greater numbers for convoy escort and other duties, even potentially serving with the main fleet if necessary. This class of ships became known as the Matsu class, and Wakaba was part of the first wave launched in 1944. A ship out of time, JDS Wakaba's service history. While the Matsu-class destroyers were a step towards faster production, it was realized they could be further simplified. This led to the Tachibana class, a subclass Nashi belonged to, though the Japanese Navy didn't differentiate. These were modular ships with alterations to streamline construction. Japan ambitiously planned for over 100, but reality set in. Only 18 Matsu and 14 Tachibana-class ships were completed, most seeing minimal service, including Nashi. Design details. At 1,350-ton standard load and 1,640 tons full load, Nashi wasn't a modern destroyer, but fit for her role. Her armament consisted of 3 127mm guns, 1 single mount forward, a twin mount aft, 4 triple 25mm mounts, and an additional 24 single mounts for anti-aircraft defense. The real firepower came from a single quadruple torpedo launcher, sufficient for the intended use. Depth charge capabilities were provided by rails and throwers with a 60 depth charge capacity. All this was propelled by 19,000 Rs shaft horsepower for a 26-knot speed. Limited Imperial Japanese service launched in January 1945 by Kawasaki. Nashi joined the fleet by March, very late in the war. Unsurprisingly, her entire Imperial Japanese service was spent off the Japanese coast. Initially assigned to the 11th Torpedo Squadron, she participated in short training cruises, often just day trips near Kure due to chronic fuel shortages caused by the submarine blockade. The crew, inexperienced and poorly trained, spent most of their time in port. In May 1945, Nashi was reassigned to Destroyer Division 52, but her duties remained largely unchanged. Her first taste of combat, albeit minimal, came on June 22, 1945, when she dodged an American B-29 air raid on Kure without any damage. However, a short time later, Nashi's demise and an unexpected future. In July 1945, Nashi underwent a curious modification. To carry a single K-10 man torpedo, a controversial weapon of dubious effectiveness, a ramp was built on her stern, reducing her depth charge capacity to 36. This modification led to her involvement in K-10 crew training in the Inland Sea, one of the few ships still operational due to fuel shortages. By July's end, only Nashi and her sister ship Hogyoku had fuel left. Nashi's luck wouldn't last. With escalating air raids, it was only a matter of time before disaster struck. On July 28, 1945, carrier aircraft attacked Nashi near Huraya. A hit to the stern caused fatal damage, sinking the destroyer in shallow water. The exact number of casualties remains unclear, with sources ranging from 17 killed and 21 injured to 38 fatalities. Regardless, Nashi's Imperial Japanese service ended tragically. A forgotten ship gets a second chance, uncertainties arise. The heavily damaged Nashi remained in shallow water for almost a decade, while other warships were scrapped. Forgotten and deemed not worth salvaging, she posed no threat to navigation. However, things took a surprising turn in 1954. Here, the details become hazy, with limited English language information available. The salvage and rebirth of JDS Wakaba. Two theories. We left off with the mystery surrounding Nashi's resurrection in 1954. Here's a breakdown of the two possibilities. Option 1, resurrection for the new force, unlikely. There's a theory that Nashi was specifically raised to be repaired and serve in the newly formed Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, MSDF, similar to the German submarine U-240 becoming the Wilhelm Bauer. However, evidence for this is scarce. Option 2, a serendipitous fate, more likely. This scenario suggests Nashi's salvage wasn't initially planned, perhaps intended for scrapping. Upon raising the ship, the Japanese discovered Nashi, despite 9 years underwater, was surprisingly salvageable. While optimistic, especially regarding the notoriously noisy engines, the new self-defense force, lacking ships, decided to refurbish her. This came at a cost of 345 million yen. From Nashi to Wakaba, a new beginning. Nashi was towed to a dry dock. Battle damage was repaired and rusted weaponry removed. During this process, the name Nashi was dropped. The reason for the name change is unclear. Some say it was due to the homophone Nashi, meaning not exist, in hiragana, causing communication issues. This seems unlikely without a verified source. More probable is the desire to move away from the Imperial Japanese legacy. This is supported by the chosen name, Wakaba, meaning young leaves in Japanese. This symbolizes recovery and a new start, a poetic choice. On May 31, 1956, the reborn destroyer joined the Self-Defense Force. Initially serving as an unarmed training ship from 1956 to 1958, Wakaba also underwent a bridge redesign to match newer models and received a large mast behind the bridge. By 1958, Wakaba's role expanded. She underwent another refit, this time receiving American weaponry and radar to become a patrol ship. This upgrade included a twin 3-inch 50 caliber mount replacing the old twin stern mount, a single Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar, 4 K-depth charge throwers, 2 depth charge racks on the stern. There's also mention of an experimental twin torpedo tube mount, though details and timing are unclear. Despite being classified as a patrol ship, Wakaba primarily served as an experimental vessel. Her main duties shifted to testing new radar systems, followed by sonar after 1960. Wakaba's service wasn't solely focused on testing. In 1957, she provided water to Toshima Island, and in 1962, she aided volcanic eruption survivors. However, tragedy struck in 1970, when the aging ship collided with a tanker. The end of an era, 1971-1972. By 1971, the wear and tear of Wakaba's long journey finally caught up. The Self-Defense Force deemed her service complete, and she was decommissioned on March 31st. Scrapping followed in 1972, marking the true end of the Imperial Japanese Navy's presence in Japan. A legacy endures. However, Wakaba's story doesn't end there. A testament to her resilience, some parts of the ship were preserved. Nashi's, Wakaba's original name, forward 127mm gun, and her quadruple torpedo tubes were restored and put on display. In this way, a piece of this extraordinary ship, the sole survivor of the Imperial Japanese Navy, to serve in a post-war peaceful role, lives on as a reminder of her unique place in Japanese naval history. Thank you for watching.